In a picturesque corner of the Scottish Highlands lies an ancient body of water shrouded in mystery.
The local people always knew of something being in Loch Ness.
I know for a fact it's there. I've seen it twice.
For centuries, tales of an unknown monster lurking in the depths have captivated locals and tourists alike.
I'm on holiday for a few days, and I wanted to see the monster.
We're on search for the Loch Ness Monster.
With over 1,000 reported sightings,
Suddenly, this thing came up.
I've seen something here I've never seen in my life before.
intense scientific scrutiny,
The question is, what have they actually experienced?
and theories that range from the improbable
I think she's like a dinosaur with a long neck.
to the incredible.
Yeah, it could well be a supernatural phenomenon.
Groundbreaking new evidence is challenging everything we thought we knew.
Wow! Did you hear that?
We started taking photos. We just couldn't figure out what it was.
Wow! That's what we're looking for.
Hey, what is this?
Whatever it is out there, it doesn't play by the rules.
Are we on the brink of uncovering the incredible truth behind one of the world's most enduring legends? There are over 30,000 lochs in Scotland, each with their own unique character and history. Many are revered for their beauty and wildlife, but one loch harbors a darker secret. Nestled in the northernmost corner of Great Britain, Loch Ness is a vast lake 23 miles long. It contains the largest volume of fresh water in Britain and has an average depth greater than the North Sea. Carved into the Scottish Highlands, it's filled with jet black water stained by peat and flanked by hills covered in dense forest. Could this be the perfect hiding place for the ultimate lake monster? Almost everyone who visits has a theory.
I picture her being very green, very big. I've always heard that it was a bit of like a hoax.
Or it could just be a giant eel or something like that.
It's not going to be a monster.
It's a massive big loch, and she's down there somewhere.
But tales of mysterious sightings in Loch Ness predate all the newspaper articles and blurry photos. In fact, there has been legend of a wild monster concealed in the water here for centuries.
St. Columba was from Ireland. He was from the north of Ireland, and he was a monk. He was on a mission to bring the message of Christianity towards the Scottish Pictish people. The Picts would have been the native people of Scotland in between the 3rd century to the 9th century AD.
St. Columba's encounters with the Picts were documented by a monk named Adonan. One particular story from his writings is believed by some to be the earliest documented evidence of the Loch Ness monster.
This is the northern edge of Loch Ness, where the loch meets the River Ness. And the River Ness is actually the location of a very special happening in the 6th century AD. St. Columba and his followers came across a group of Pictish pagan folk. And these people were mourning the loss of one of their friends who'd gone into the river and who'd been attacked by a great water beast. Columba, wanting to showcase the power of the Almighty God, ordered one of his followers to head into the water to test it out, to go to the other side, to get a boat and to bring it back. And about halfway across, the water beast starts to come up to the surface, and it rears its great head and lets out just shriek. Columba stands on the edge of the River Ness, holds out his staff, and with his right hand makes the sign of the cross and orders the beast to stop, go back, and harm no man. And that moment, the beast was dragged as if by ropes down into the depths of the River Ness. It was said that the beast was actually banished from the river and into Loch Ness itself.
It's a compelling story. Did the monster start life in the River Ness, only to be banished to the loch by a saint? Sadly, we lack the historical records to know exactly how the Picts lived and what they believed.
The Picts are shrouded in mystery, and they are hard to define because they didn't leave behind very many written messages that we can study. When Columba would have been visiting the Picts along here, he would have been entering a landscape that was much wilder than it is now. It would have been full of large predators, wolves and bear and boar. And these Picts, they would have had constant interaction with these wild creatures. And so the idea of a wild creature, a wild monster living in Loch Ness is not too far-fetched and wouldn't have been too far-fetched for the Picts at the time.
It's a tantalizing glimpse into the folklore that permeated society over 1,000 years ago. But not all experts agree that this was the first sighting of the Loch Ness monster.
The origins of the Loch Ness monster are a really, really interesting question. And for some people, it starts with St. Columba encountering the monster when he's going through the Highlands. For me, though, that's not the beginning of the Loch Ness monster story, because Irish saints were often encountering monsters in these dark ages. There's no real evidence for a continuity between the St. Columba story and the modern Loch Ness monster phenomenon.
Locals have been convinced of a monster in the loch long before the photos of the 20th century made Nessie a household name worldwide.
Hold it right there like that.
Willie Cameron's ancestors have lived around Loch Ness for hundreds of years.
Big smile again.
He now works locally in hospitality and marketing and is affectionately known as Mr. Loch Ness.
The local people always knew of something being in Loch Ness. The word beast was used before monster. The locals treat it just as normal, just like the woods and the hills and the sheep and the cows. It's just there. It's not anything that preoccupies them at all. My father was brought up for a short period of time on Foyers on the southern shore of Loch Ness, and he always talked about Granny Gray at Foyers. She used to talk about the beast and whatever there was in Loch Ness. It was quite general part of conversation.
I've been here since 1989. I've seen it twice. If they're locals, they are not bothered about the monster, not in the slightest. We just accept that it's there. It's as normal to us as the grass growing.
The Loch Ness monster first gained global attention in the 1930s, following a newspaper article in the Inverness Courier, documenting what is now accepted to be the first modern sighting of Nessie by a woman called Aldi Mackay.
She was manageress of the Drumnadrochit Hotel here, which is now the Loch Ness Centre. And in 1933, she was returning from a house sale in Inverness. And she was coming along the unimproved section of the A82.
The loch was very flat, calm, as if you'd gone over it with an iron. And every cloud and every leaf and every tree was reflected in the water. And then suddenly, this thing came up. And I can see it still. It just rose out of the water, black, wet, with the water rolling off it. And I yelled at my husband, "Stop the beast." And by the time he had stopped, the thing had gone underneath, back down again. And then it suddenly shot off to the far side of the loch in a circle and down, and that was it.
This was a good story because it came from a reliable source. Aldi Mackay, upstanding member of the community, business lady.
She tried to keep it to herself. She didn't come bursting in telling everybody about it. You must put your mind back to the Presbyterian Drumnadrochit of the 1930s. Self-advertisement was seen as a bad thing. hard to imagine that today. And she tried to keep it to herself, but her husband dropped her in it with Alex Campbell, the water bailiff, but he also worked for the Inverness Courier newspaper.
Alec must have thought to himself, well, Aldi wouldn't be telling porky pies, so I'll just run with the story and hope to get it into the newspaper.
The article launched an international sensation. The legend of the Loch Ness Monster was born. And with it, another curious breed, the Nessie Hunter. Alan McKenna runs a voluntary research group dedicated to discovering the truth about Nessie. He makes regular trips to the loch in the hope that he can be the man to finally solve this famous mystery.
I've been a Nessie hunter full-time now for the last 3 years. I've had a childhood obsession with it, and that's just grown and grown and grown the older I got. I come to Loch Ness every single month to do hydrophone studies. We record it, we analyse it, we study it.
A hydrophone is an underwater microphone that can pick up sounds from over 2 miles away. For the past 3 years, Alan has been taking recordings all around the loch, come rain or shine, determined to capture the elusive call of Nessie and prove her existence to the world.
What we're trying to do is to build a database of all the different sounds we can hear in Loch Ness, whether it's man-made sounds, if it's natural. Could we identify it, and could we find the origin of it? And that, for me, is quite exciting. Urquhart Bay is probably one of the most interesting places to explore in Loch Ness. The bottom of the loch is basically a mini mountain range below the surface, and I find that very, very fascinating. And if there is something hiding in Loch Ness, then who knows? Maybe it's in Urquhart Bay. I mean, if you look down to your right or left, it's nothing but dark, peaty waters. It's terrifying. We're rocking about, and you can see the waves. It's scary. But I'm in my element here. This is one of my favourite things to do. Ali, is this a good spot to drop? Yeah, no problem. Perfect. Let's do it.
Alan uses a hydrophone with a 30-foot cable, hooked up to a portable speaker and a digital recorder.
Now, we're already picking up some interference, which is quite interesting, but there's a number of possible explanations for that. That could be electrical, it could be the weather. We have to take into consideration everything, because not every noise we hear is going to be the Loch Ness Monster. What you're about to hear just now, actually, we've got a boat that's coming in, and you can actually hear the boat arriving. It's just in front of us now, so if you listen carefully, it's getting louder. We can record that now, and we now know that noise is caused by this boat. Boat engines comes across quite dramatic. You can, for me anyway, you can tell that it's mechanical. It's a very, very loud noise. So, in my opinion, if there was an unknown animal in Loch Ness, that it would be the complete opposite of what we've just heard there. None of us can be sure about what it would sound like. But that's the exciting part, that's the unknown. This is why we keep coming back every month, hoping to find that answer.
For decades, experts and enthusiasts have argued over what type of creature Nessie really is. Adrian Shine is a naturalist who has been studying at Loch Ness since 1973.
The Loch Ness Monster is an amalgam of theories, an amalgam of possibilities. Almost every animal in the Ark has been suggested as a potential candidate. Loch Ness theories began with the sea serpent idea. And by sea serpent, I mean the sort of vertically undulating, multi-humped, serpentine creature. But zoologists twigged the fact that serpents can't wiggle that way. Serpents wiggle this way. And so what was to be done?
A curved neck looping out of the water didn't reflect the reality of how sea snakes moved. Theories began to change, influenced in no small part by the sensational discovery of fossils off the coast of Dorset by the trailblazing paleontologist Mary Anning. Her discovery of the first complete skeleton of a marine reptile called a plesiosaur struck a chord with many Nessie enthusiasts. If the south coast of England can harbor its own prehistoric secrets, why not the ancient waters of Loch Ness?
So around that time, newspapers were publishing these fascinating and exciting scientific findings, including diagrams, skeletal reconstructions of plesiosaurs. The general public were gaining knowledge of the existence of these creatures historically, but also importantly what they looked like.
It seemed more rational. If huge serpents were not really credible, what could be credible? Well, plesiosaurs had existed, these long-necked creatures, so there was still that element of the serpentine in it. So the plesiosaur rose to the top of the pile.
They were around from about 200 million years ago to about 66 million years ago, when the asteroid hit the Earth that caused the extinction of dinosaurs. And there's no fossil evidence of any plesiosaurs having survived beyond that catastrophic mass extinction event.
Nevertheless, the idea of a surviving prehistoric creature began to gather pace and is still strong today. Could it be that a creature long believed to be extinct is still living in Scotland's biggest loch?
There are the species out there that we know about. There are species out there that come from folklore and myth. And then actually what we have, which I think is possibly most relevant to the Loch Ness Monster, are what are called Lazarus species. And Lazarus species are animals that are thought to have gone extinct, that we find evidence that they're actually still out there. One that I find really exciting from a history of science perspective is the coelacanth. Up until 1938, it was believed that the coelacanth was extinct. It was only known from fossil evidence. But then a fish scientist at a fish market in East Africa came across this weird and interesting looking fish, which ultimately turned out to be a coelacanth.
Whether or not prehistoric reptiles still lived, Mary Anning's discoveries and the boom in fossil finding that followed signaled a shift in how people thought about the Loch Ness Monster. No longer a mythical beast, Nessie was something more tangible, a flesh and blood creature rooted in science, a living fossil from a bygone era.
Well, it was in the winter. It was the month of January. We were working at an old building above Urquhart Castle, and to the west of the castle. And my friend that was with me working, he shouted for his binoculars. So I went out, and he was standing pointing towards fires. And halfway across, this was coming across. First of all, it looked like a submarine. I was in the Navy during the Second World War, and you'd think it was, coming closer and closer. And then there was the long neck, and you could see the three humps. It was flat calm. A lot of people say to me, "Well, do you think were you sober at the time, or Well, I had stopped drinking. I used to drink, but I was quite sober that day, and there was no mistake about it. What I saw was a monster.
In January, when I was up here conducting my research, I did hear a very bizarre sound, which it totally caught me off guard.
The recording was captured by Dutch film students late at night on a nearby pier, before Alan had a chance to set up his audio recorder.
To the untrained eye, that might look...
This film is the only documented evidence of the mysterious sound.
In reality, all it is, it's wind turbulence coming down from the surrounding hills, hitting the loch. It's... Wow! Did you hear that?
Could this be the first time in history that we've been able to hear Ness's true voice?
For me, that's the most distinguished sound. That sound that I heard that night, I have heard something similar, but it's only at night time, but it was never that clear before. So if there is something in Loch Ness, could it be nocturnal? It would make sense because the loch is pitch black. Today we haven't had anything too significant. We're just hearing a lot of natural sounds as well as boats. I'll be back here next week again. We'll always return to Loch Ness, because whatever's in there does not play by the rules.
Underwater audio recordings are just one of the countless methods that have been used to prove the monster's existence.
Probably the most elegant method of measuring species diversity was the environmental DNA study done by Professor Gemmell at the University of Otago in New Zealand. The loch was sampled from end to end, side to side, and top to bottom. We assisted with the sampling, particularly the deep water sampling.
Any animal that lives within an aquatic habitat will shed cells and DNA into the surrounding environment. So if you collect the water samples, you can then genetically profile those water samples and identify the types of animals that are living in or also living around those aquatic habitats.
250 water samples were taken at various depths and locations. The DNA was then sequenced and compared against a global database, painting a fascinating picture of life in the loch.
They have identified a number of animal species that we would expect to find in and around the loch, but they didn't find any evidence for reptilian DNA within the samples. They did find mammal, they did find fish, they did find amphibian, but no reptile.
The lack of reptile DNA led to Professor Gemmell and his colleagues concluding that it was highly unlikely that a plesiosaur was living in Loch Ness. But for die-hard plesiosaur believers, there is still hope that the prehistoric reptile could still be down there.
In any eDNA study, there is approximately 20% of the DNA that is unexplained, and that was the case in the Loch Ness samples. There's nothing unusual to suggest that there's a monster that's been detected using the eDNA technique. But that 20% of unexplained DNA means that there is room for a Loch Ness monster for anybody who wants it to still be there.
The Loch Ness monster is classified as a cryptid, an elusive creature whose existence remains unconfirmed by science. But this hasn't stopped a dedicated community of investigators from tirelessly seeking evidence of its reality.
Cryptozoology is the study of hidden animals. It is currently a pseudoscience, but animals have been found in the past, such as the Komodo dragon, the giant squid, and even the gorilla up until 1847 was a cryptid. The Loch Ness Monster is the most famous cryptid of all time. Could there still be undiscovered creatures out there? I believe there could. Hopefully, if we all get involved, if we all take up the mantle, one day we'll find them.
As a species, we're just incredibly curious. We want to know about how the world works, about what's out there. The idea that there is this huge creature swimming around in that dark loch is something that's definitely got a romantic appeal.
One of the most famous monster hunters in Loch Ness is Steve Faltham. Since 1991, he has lived on the shore of the loch in the hope that he would be the man to find Nessie once and for all.
I've been fascinated by this mystery all my life. I came here when I was 7 and I just got hooked on the possibilities. Grown men looking for monsters in a Scottish loch. And I thought, that's what I want to do, that's what I want to be, a full-time Nessie hunter, solve this mystery. I was in my mid-20s, maybe about 27, and my biggest fear would be not doing that, getting to my ripe old age of retirement and everything, and looking back on life and saying, I wish I'd tried to solve that mystery when I had a chance. So it was make my life the adventure I want it to be, really.
So convinced was Steve that the monster existed, he quit his job, broke up with his girlfriend, and put his house on the market. A few weeks later, he was in a converted mobile library van, driving from his home in the south of England to the Scottish Highlands.
I've been here full-time now since 1991. That's currently 33 years, living in this van on the shores of Loch Ness, watching and waiting. For me, probably the most mysterious thing I've seen happened in the first year when I saw something on the surface of the water just pushing against the waves like a torpedo. So as the waves are this size, they're all going that way. And for 5 seconds, this thing went boff, 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 boff. Just a white spray of water. As it hit each oncoming wave, there'd be a bigger splash. Boff, 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 against the waves. And I looked at that and I still can't explain what that was. That gave me the impression that this job would be really quite easy. If I see that in the first year, it should take about 3 years to get the mystery solved. Still haven't done that.
Like so many others, Steve's leading theory was that the monster was a plesiosaur. This was in no small part influenced by a now infamous piece of evidence known as the surgeon's photo.
If there is one photograph of the Loch Ness Monster which would be recognized virtually throughout the world, it is the surgeon's picture taken in 1934 by the surgeon Kenneth Wilson. And it has done much to prop up the plesiosaur idea.
This photo must have been real, not simply because of the way it was presented, but because of the person who took it. This man was a gynecologist, a consultant on Harley Street, holidaying at the loch. He had a lot to lose by publishing this photo, and yet he still did. Surely that meant that it must have been genuine.
That was the main piece of the jigsaw puzzle in my growing up years, what I believe this animal looked like. It's a plesiosaur. Had to be. And a large part of the reason I thought it was a plesiosaur was the surgeon's photograph, because there's no other explanation for that. That's what I was looking for. Plesiosaurs swimming about in Loch Ness.
Now this photo shows the swan-like head and neck emerging from the water with a disturbance below it. Researchers went wild, newspapers went wild all around the globe. This was proof finally that Nessie did exist. Here was an animal that we did not recognize emerging from the loch. The public really bought into this phenomenon. In fact, it appeared in textbooks and comics and even on television programs, and it still appears in the papers to this very day. Whenever Nessie is mentioned, that photo is used. That is still the benchmark of what the Loch Ness Monster looks like.
So my eye caught this black object, which I thought at first was an upturned boat, you know, and it was coming across slowly, but the hump would be about, I would say, 6 or 7 feet above the waves. And I was really glued to it, and it was coming across slowly towards me, about half a mile behind where I was stopped. And I made out it was going down slowly. I was losing the sight of the hump, as it were, until it went completely out of my sight. I seen something here I'd never seen in my life before, and I'm sure it was Nessie.
If Aldi Mackay's sighting of the monster kick-started the modern Nessie phenomenon, the surgeon's photograph sent it stratospheric. But the story of how the photo was captured is almost as shocking as its famous subject.
A very flamboyant character called Marmaduke Wetherall was hired by the Daily Mail newspaper in the winter of 1933 to join the first ever expedition to try and investigate the monster. Well, he found some footprints on the other side of the loch on the south shore. They took plaster casts with due reverence, sent them down to the Natural History Museum, and they concluded that the plaster casts were from the foot of a hippopotamus. Yes, a hippopotamus.
The footprints had in fact been made by a taxidermy astray. The Daily Mail fell for the hoax and printed a headline declaring the existence of a monster in Loch Ness. When the hoax was exposed, the paper denounced Wetherall publicly, distancing themselves from the stunt and hanging their former correspondent out to dry.
Well, Wetherall then went home and he said, well, if they want a monster, we'll give them one. And he got onto his stepson, Christian Sperling, to make a monster, no more than so big. He then took the model back up to Scotland, went to a little inlet and took pictures of it.
To conceal his part in the hoax, Wetherall sold the photo through his friend, a surgeon called Dr. Kenneth Wilson. Fittingly, the photo was first offered to the Daily Mail, who gladly printed it on the front page of their paper on Saturday, April 21st, 1934.
All the good pictures are fakes. It's just the way it is. The bad pictures might have something to them, but the good pictures are fakes.
I think if the surgeon's photograph was still presumed to be genuine, I would probably still believe plesiosaurs were swimming about in here. It was the iconic piece of evidence.
The hoax was finally exposed when Christian Sperling confessed his role in it 60 years later, in the 1990s. Confronted by researchers with the famous picture, he scribbled across it, "This is a photograph of the monster made by me in 1933-34 for Mr. A. Wetherall." Sperling passed away not long after. One of the most enduring images of Nessie was finally proven to be a fake.
When I opened the Sunday paper and read the story, I was crestfallen. I would have to say it was probably the lowest point in the 33 years that I've sat here. It was the point when I thought, well, if the surgeon's photograph's fake, what have we got left? What am I here to find? What are we looking for? It took a long time to reevaluate all the evidence and look again and say, okay, if it's not a plesiosaur, but people are still seeing something, what are they seeing?
When you visit somewhere like Loch Ness and you know of its reputation, and there's a part of you that really would be quite keen to see this monster, and you look out across those dark, murky waters, and there's waves and there's logs floating, it's very easy, by the power of suggestion, think that you're actually seeing the Loch Ness monster. People can end up seeing and hearing things that aren't actually really there. They've taken in some information and they've filled in the gaps themselves.
There have been suggestions that maybe the sightings could be explained by a large exotic fish.
There are advantages and disadvantages to any animal group that you might suggest. One of them is my favourite, the odd navigationally challenged sturgeon.
The most likely thing is a kind of catfish. The biggest catfish grow to 5 meters long.
What that eDNA study did find was lots of evidence of eels. Some people have interpreted that as indicating that there could be a giant eel, and therefore that the Loch Ness monster could be explained as being a giant eel. The reality is that it's much more logical and reasonable to interpret a lot of eel DNA as meaning that there are a lot of eels in Loch Ness rather than it being a giant eel.
I sometimes think, are any two of us looking for the same explanation here? There's so many theories as to what Nessie could be, and almost all of them have as much validity as the next one.
Loch Ness has long been a battleground for conflicting theories, but a startling discovery in 2016 threatened to end the debate once and for all. A Norwegian maritime company called Konspeng had deployed a state-of-the-art underwater robot named Moonin to map the loch's depths with powerful sonar. The torpedo-shaped submersible, previously used to search for buried treasure and plot pipeline routes deep at sea, made its most famous finds yet on a grey spring day in the Scottish Highlands. As the scans fed back to the operational team, an anomaly immediately drew the eye. The 30-foot-long body and unmistakable protruding neck of Nessie. The images were scrutinized and shared around the world. Could this be the conclusive evidence of Nessie's existence? The scans were indeed of a monster, but this monster was man-made. It was a prop that had sunk during the shooting of a Hollywood film, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, in 1969. The giant model had broken free of its restraints and disappeared into the black water before filming had even begun. For the next 50 years, it lay undisturbed, 180 meters beneath the surface. It wasn't the silver bullet the Nessie hunters everywhere had hoped for, but rather a reminder that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
Well, my last sighting actually was in September 1976. And I was in the garden at the time. I was looking across the bay. It was flat, calm. And I saw a great disturbance close to the shore. And then I saw this terrific, great black thing at right angles to the shore on the far side of the bay. 60 or 70 feet long. A long black thing on top of the water. But the funny thing was, it had 3 peculiar sort of humps on it. And then I suddenly saw something move on the shore about 20 yards nearer the pier. A great, big, light grey thing. And it sort of moved along like that towards where the other one had been and went into the water and disappeared. So there were obviously two of them.
In the 1930s, new sightings were reported in local newspapers and by word of mouth. But in the past 90 years, technology has allowed a global community to develop online. All over the world at any time of day, people can post sightings and comment on the famous Scottish monster.
The image you're looking at caused one of the biggest debates. We have video footage of the Loch Ness Monster.
Paige Daly is registrar of the Loch Ness Monster Fan Club and head of the official Loch Ness Sightings Register.
Breaking news TikTok from this. Flooding in Scotland is insane. There's only one logical response to this.
Social media really has played a big role in getting the word of the fan club out there to the next generation of people. The reach of people around the world is quite wide. I'm just looking at my TikTok right now. We'll have a look at some of the countries. I mean, UK and United States are quite standard, but then we even reach Malaysia, Israel, Germany, Canada, Spain. It's all around the world that people are sending in interest about the Loch Ness Monster.
Paige's passion for the Loch Ness Monster stems from her father, Gary Campbell, who founded the fan club in 1996.
So my dad was driving along Loch Ness when he saw this strange dark thing coming out of the water. He pulled the car over, he had a closer look, and after a few minutes this thing disappeared. After a bit of research, he realised no one was tracking Nessie, and that's when he started the official Loch Ness Monster fan club. And alongside that, he started the Register of Sightings. Then in 2023, I had my TikTok account and I decided, hey, I'll talk about Nessie and see what the world thinks. And it kind of went a bit viral.
Don't know if you heard, but the Loch Ness Monster is back. Here is the first official confirmed sighting of 2023.
We got over 100,000 views. I had a conversation with my dad and I asked, hey, I think we should be doing some more videos about Nessie because people are really interested. And that's when the Loch Ness Monster fan club started to transition over to social media and mainly on TikTok.
Paige took over the fan club, and since it relocated to TikTok, its following has exploded, giving her the ability to reach millions of viewers in an instant.
Back when the fan club started in the 90s, things were done over the phone, via faxing, and through emails and sending letters even. Nowadays, all I have to do is film a quick TikTok, put it out there, and the whole world is aware that something's happened at Loch Ness. With the algorithm, it pushes it out to a wide variety of people, and that's really where the debate comes in.
Breaking news. Something unexplained has been seen at Loch Ness yesterday. As you know, guys, I'm always open for suggestions, but what do you think this could be?
And quite a few people thought at this sighting maybe it was just a cloud shadow on the loch. And of course we've got the skeptics out there, but we've also got people debating it and really pulling apart this information. A lot of people are really happy and saying like that they've made it to Nessie Talk and it's a great side of TikTok to have finally found. We really just want to grab people's attention so that we can take them into this world and say, hey, what is this? Do you think you know what it is? Please let us know. It's a big mystery at the end of the day. No one really knows what's in there. And that's really the true attraction. Could you be the one to solve one of the biggest mysteries out there?
The powerful mystery of what lies beneath Loch Ness draws over 1 million tourists every year who flock to the shores of the loch with their cameras at the ready. Every shadow in the water is meticulously scrutinized. And for Steve Feltham, keeping track of it all is a full-time job.
Because everybody around Loch Ness knows I'm here on Dawes Beach, people get sent to me with photographs. And so every week, more than every week, in the summer, I'm seeing people turn up here saying, oh, my son took a photograph of something, do you want to look at it? I always have an open mind at the start of looking at an image, but I would say that 90% of the time when I'm shown something, I can instantly look at it and say, well, it's a duck. They're not out to trick me, they're not out to fool. 90% of the people are genuinely mystified. There's another 5%, I would say, that are deliberately trying to cause a hoax. They've gone, oh, I'll just put that into Photoshop and let's just put a little Nessie in the background. see how far that goes with those monster hunting nuts up at Loch Ness. And the other 5%, that's the stuff that gets me up in the morning. That's that I look at and I go, wow, that's what we're looking for. What's that?
The legend of the Loch Ness Monster has echoed through the ages.
It was said that the beast was actually banished from the river and into Loch Ness itself.
But with a fifth of DNA sample from the loch still unexplained, the mystery continues to grow.
Almost every animal in the Ark has been suggested as a potential candidate.
Recent discoveries have shed new light on the debate.
In January, when I was up here conducting my research, I did hear a very bizarre sound. It totally caught me off guard.
Did you hear that?
I still don't know what it was.
But are we any closer to discovering the true identity of the elusive beast?
I sometimes think, are any two of us looking for the same explanation here?
It's a topic that divides opinion. But for those who have witnessed the creature firsthand, there is no question of its existence. Some of the most convincing sightings have come not from visitors, but the locals who live and work alongside this famous body of water all year round.
First time I saw it was straight over the other side of the bay, close to the headland. Straight over there.
Val Moffat has lived in a cottage overlooking the northern shore of Loch Ness for the past 35 years.
People who turn up here and expect to see it just because they've come to Loch Ness, so they'll see the monster. I've been here since 1989 now, and I've seen it twice. The first time I saw it was in 1990. I was driving back from the village, and as I came up the hill, I could see the far side of the bay, and it was right over there, just where, close to the shoreline, but straight down there. I glanced over towards the bay, and I saw this large, like an upturned boat, dark grey colour, and shiny from the water on it. It wasn't moving, it was just in the water. I glanced out at it several times as I drove up the hill, and the last time I glanced, it was gone. But it was about, I'd say, 25 to 30 feet in length from front to back of it. It was just like an upturned boat. That's the best way I can describe it. It was dark grey in colour and shiny from the water that was on its back. Didn't see it for very long, and it was gone. Later in the afternoon, I had to go down to the village. I went to the post office, and there was a lady. Her name was Elma. So I went up to the counter and I said, Elma, I've seen it. I've seen the monster. And she said, have you, dear? That's nice. Nobody's bothered. They just accept that it's there and they just don't talk about it. When I saw it again 10 years later, I never said a word.
Val's second sighting came in November 2001, when she was in her garden with friend Jenny.
We were both sort of just pottering around, and I'd spotted the monster at the front of the house. And Jenny happened to see it a few minutes later and said, well, what's that out there? So I said, it's Nessie. She said, you're joking. I said, no, it is, because it was exactly the same, just it was slightly smaller because it was further out of the loch. It was the strangest thing, but brilliant to see.
One of the interesting questions is, how do we explain situations where we maybe have more than one witness? When people witness something unusual, like a possible sighting of a UFO or a ghost or the Loch Ness Monster, then they will discuss it with each other. And what can happen then is that one person's account can actually influence another person's memory. And if that first person gives a very confident account of what they say they've seen, then another co-witness may actually end up taking some of that information in and not realising it, incorporating it into their own memory, and so the accounts can become more similar in that way.
Unfortunately, no matter how many people have seen it, they're always doubted by everyone. But I know for a fact it's there. I've seen it twice.
Long-term Nessie hunter Steve Feltham has yet to experience his own clear sighting, but his faith remains unwavering. To fund his constant vigil over the loch, he relies on the sale of small Nessie figurines to passing tourists.
It doesn't take much money to keep me sitting on this beach trying to solve this mystery. And the models that I make brings in enough to make my life sustainable.
But 33 years is a very long time to wait for that one big break. So has Steve ever been tempted to fake his own Nessie sighting and finally cash in on a life spent waiting?
Over the years, people have said, you could make a fake and you'd get away with it. I know that I wouldn't get away with it because I wouldn't be able to straight-faced lie that it was anything it wasn't. I try to retain integrity in anything that I sincerely think is unexplained here, and that's all I can do.
While Steve gets by on a modest income and a pair of binoculars, not all monster hunters have operated on a shoestring budget. In 1972, a wealthy American named Bob Rhines arrived at the loch for the first of several high-profile expeditions. He was flush with cash, cutting-edge equipment, and a determination to solve the mystery and make a name for himself.
I met Bob Rhines a couple of times. He was always a hero of mine, just for his passion for the subject, just for the amount of summers that he would come back here and the amount of money he threw at trying to solve what it was that he believed was in here.
Perhaps Ryan's most famous contribution to the Nessie debate came when he took an underwater camera and a strobe light on one of his expeditions to the Highlands. As the camera was dragged across the bottom of the loch, it picked up an object that sparked a global debate, with everyone from Harvard scientists to experts at the British Museum weighing in. Could this be the giant flipper of the Loch Ness monster?
We were encouraged by some pictures of a flipper, apparently a flipper, and we were fascinated by those.
The flipper photo was a huge deal, and the reason it was a huge deal is that until that point, we had no physical evidence that the Loch Ness Monster existed. Sure, we had the surgeon's photo on top of the water, but this thing was swimming beneath the water. Not only was there a photo, there was also a sonar signature to go with it.
The eminent naturalist, Sir Peter Scott, threw his weight behind the findings and helped Rhines propel his photo into the academic spotlight. They co-authored an article in the esteemed science journal, Nature, putting the images to the scientific community and for the first time suggesting an official scientific name for the monster.
Nessiterus rhomboteryx, the diamond-finned wonder of Loch Ness. Now, it's a big word. It's got a lot of letters. And so it is a very good opportunity for anagrams. One skeptic came up with Monster Hoax by Sir Peter S. But Bob Rhines came up with another one. Yes, both pics are monsters are. And I'm sure there are Scrabble players who could come up with a lot more.
The debate over the authenticity of Bob Rhines' flipper photo raged, until it finally emerged that the photos had indeed been doctored.
It was a great disappointment when we found that they'd been faked. The outline of the flipper had actually been retouched onto a picture of swirling silt as the camera dragged through the sediment. So it was a bit of a disgrace.
They airbrushed the shape in there. That's cheating a bit, really.
When it comes to hoaxes and people just making stuff up, there are multiple motivations there. On the one hand, there's a definite mindset amongst some hoaxers. It's nothing more than just getting away with it, just pulling it off, just fooling people. For other people, there might be some kind of financial interest. It's even possible that some of these hoaxers might genuinely believe in the monster and believe that this is just a good way of kind of keeping public interest in the thing, which they believe really is there, even if their particular claim is actually not quite what it seems.
Do hoaxes matter? We have to accept that this is a bit of a national joke. It's fair game. We are fair game. Can we work it out?
For lifelong Nessie hunters like Steve, the day job often entails more debunking than discovering, as hoaxes and misidentifications abound.
I would say I've maybe come across about 20 hoaxes that are ones that, if I hadn't applied my local knowledge to them, those hoaxes would still be in the canon of evidence. They would still be in the jigsaw puzzle as a possible sighting of Nessie. I never realised when I set off in 1991 that so much of what I do is disproving evidence. I'm like a dog with a stick. If I suspect there's something that does not add up in this sighting, I'll not leave it until I can identify what it is.
Purists such as Steve and Adrian interrogate every piece of evidence brought to light, looking for inconsistencies and rational explanations. But for the local economy, a Nessie sighting that goes viral is never a bad thing.
We have all the wildlife of Great Britain sitting around this loch in the Highlands of Scotland, but the only creature that people really want to see when they come here, of all these millions that come here, is the Loch Ness Monster.
Here at Nessieland, we get people from all over the world visiting. America, Europe, Asia, you name it. And, you know, people are just attracted to the whole Nessie phenomenon. It's our bread and butter. It's very much what keeps this area alive.
Would you like a receipt for it?
It's all right.
That's great. Enjoy your holiday. Thank you. Bye-bye. My business is mostly to do with tourists. The mystery of the Loch Ness Monster is definitely a good thing for the area. Everybody comes to see her. Very often she's viewed kind of the beginning of April. You get a few spottings of her. But every time I go past the loch, I have a wee look, so you never know.
Yeah, I would say people in the States, we're aware of what the Loch Ness Monster is. You know, you see it on TV programs, stuff, that sort of thing.
I know, I remember when I was maybe 9 or 10 reading about the books and things like that.
I'm on holiday for a few days, and I wanted to see the monster. My husband told me that he's living inside the water, and sometimes if you look really, really hard, you can see the monster, but I couldn't, unfortunately.
If it weren't for Loch Ness, the monster in it, all the myths and what have you, and the legends, then I don't think would have probably wouldn't have even known about this place and wouldn't have come up here.
I think the Loch Ness Monster tale is just one that's fun to chase, and when in Scotland, you must go see.
I think worldwide, the Loch Ness Monster is known.
Figurines, cuddly stuffed toys, fridge magnets, postcards. People buy a bit of everything.
Yeah, okay, it's business, but what's wrong with business? We've got to survive one way or the other. It's huge. Multi-million-pound business. The future is bright, green and cuddly.
Rain or shine, tourists flock in their thousands to the loch, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the Highlands' most famous celebrity. And each year, hundreds of sightings are reported. But what exactly are people seeing?
Ever since I was a child, I've been interested in the mysterious and the strange, but I'm also a professional scientist, and I was kind of interested in how science could really inform how people think about the unknown, and maybe we can answer some questions about why people report strange things which we couldn't do in the past. There's a common belief among skeptics that witnesses are lying or they're just making up what they've seen. But actually, we've got evidence that isn't necessarily the case. The question is, for me as a scientist, what have they actually experienced?
In his quest to find some clarity in the murky world of Nessie hunting, Charles has compiled a database containing over 1,800 reports of monster sightings in Loch Ness, spanning from the 1930s to the present day.
If we look at cultural imagery of the Loch Ness Monster, it's often portrayed with hoops above the water. So you might expect, if there's a strong cultural influence on the witnesses, that this would have a high proportion of the reports would reflect that stereotyped image of the looped monster. In fact, hooped form Nessie reports are really, really rare, about 2.5% of the total number of reports. And that implies to me witnesses are reporting what they've actually seen.
So if the vast majority of reported sightings are made in good faith, it begs the question, what is it that people are witnessing in the loch?
I saw what appeared to me to be an upturned boat, but it disappeared. I presume it sank. I had no other feelings at all in the matter. But then it reappeared. And I would describe it as a whale-like object. It was block-ended, going from, say, a metre above the surface to about 20, 30 feet the other end. We saw neither head, nor tail, nor fins. It appeared to be drifting towards us, and I am perfectly satisfied it realized that it was going to drift ashore, and it did not want to drift ashore. So it turned, and cutting across the wind, cutting across the southwest wind, it went out into the deep and went below us. Now, the interesting thing that this sighting overall is over 45 minutes, so it's not just a flash. It's quite a prolonged sighting. I don't know to this day what it was, but I was fascinated by it more than anything else.
Whatever does lie beneath the surface, Loch Ness is still a highly dangerous body of water, with intrepid swimmers and amateur boaters regularly getting into trouble. It's for this reason that it's home to the only inland lifeboat station in Scotland. Run by a team of volunteers on call 24 hours a day.
Aberdeen Coast Guard, Aberdeen Coast Guard, Loch Ness lifeboat. Loch Ness lifeboat, this is Aberdeen Coast Guard, go ahead of it. Looks normal, November 4, remaining November 4. Roger, that's received, over.
It's very deep, very dark, very cold. The weather here changes very, very quickly. We can get waves on here up to 3 metres.
My perception of Loch Ness before being part of the crew was completely different. I would never have realised what a dangerous place it is.
The water is quite often colder than the sea, never really goes above 6 degrees. When it's hot and sunny out, everyone thinks, oh, I'll go for a quick dip. Actually, you could be hypothermic in Loch Ness in 20 minutes.
Every Thursday night, the crew report to their station on the northern shore of the loch to train and to keep up to date with life-saving techniques.
Can you imagine that bollard over there being the bow of the casualty vessel?
Though often calm in appearance, the water here has a monstrous side of its own.
A lot of the time when we train, the weather is, like today, quite calm and placid. And it's a great way to learn the steps and the processes.
Okay, light secure?
Yeah. Okay, lovely. But the reality is, as soon as the wind's up and the rain's hammering down and the waves are bouncing the boats all over the place, everything changes.
Navigating the deep and treacherous water requires skill, and while the crew of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution are always looking out for people in trouble, the thought of something lurking below the surface is hard to escape.
We all like to think that Nessie's down there somewhere. I'm definitely a believer.
See, at the end of the day, the body of water here is so big, who says what's in there with any certainty?
You do think about it, whether you believe in Nessie or not. When you're in the middle of that expanse of dark water, in the dark, you can barely see the shoreline. There's mist across the water. You might have a little bit of moonlight, and then you'll hear some waves go in the background. It's nice to think that that might be Nessie keeping an eye on things.
For some, the thought of Nessie is a source of comfort. But for others, the idea of a monstrous creature lurking in the loch is enough to keep them firmly on dry land.
You couldn't pay me enough money to go swimming in Loch Ness. I just won't do it. I just will never do it.
No way, no.
I would not set foot in that loch. It's too eerie, it's too deep, it's too dark, it's too cold, the thing's pitch black.
I don't think I'd ever go swimming or paddling in Loch Ness. It's too cold and there's a monster in there, guys.
Oh yeah, sure. I could ride Nessie.
When you're there and you look down into the dark depths of the loch, it's very uninviting. It's a place that if you go too far down below the surface, you will disappear. You can't see a thing. It's a dark place. It's a cold place. And there's been many stories of people going for a swim and drowning, as if being pulled down by the loch.
For centuries, those living around Loch Ness have been aware of its dangers, with accidental drownings all too common. Could it be that stories of a monster lurking in the icy waters serve a more practical purpose?
Of course, there is a theory that the tales of the beast was to ward off people going near the loch, going near the water, because the water is very, very deep, underwater currents.
Well, it's a good way, isn't it, of stopping people swimming in Loch Ness, which is generally a very bad idea.
It's a magical way of getting your children to remember the stories and also remember why you shouldn't get too close to the edge of the dark loch. I've never once swam in Loch Ness. And either that's because of my own irrational fear of dark water, or maybe it's because I know too many stories about the Loch Ness Monster.
Cautionary tales of monstrous creatures have served a valuable purpose since ancient times. In Greek mythology, the sirens' deadly songs lured distracted sailors to their death, while classic fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood and Hansel and Gretel use witches and child-eating wolves to warn about the perils of trusting strangers. Every culture has its own parables and myths, but the idea of an elusive river monster transcends borders and languages. Could creatures similar to that suspected of living in Loch Ness exist in large bodies of water all over the world? In British Columbia, Canada, a monster called Ogopogo is said to reside in the vast Okanagan Lake. For hundreds of years, indigenous people told stories of a water spirit inhabiting the lake. However, as European settlers arrived, the legend of Ogopogo evolved into a long serpentine beast with humps rising from the water's surface.
The Ogopogo is an elongate lake monster. It's dark green in color, has very deep scales, yellow eyes, it's about 30 to 40 feet long. It's very attracted by fishing boats or anything that's emitting an electrical pulse.
But is Ogopogo merely a figment of overactive imaginations? Or could there be something more lurking beneath the waves? An incredible 16% of British Columbians believe in its existence.
Researchers and fans alike have theorized about what the Ogopogo could be. Is it a lake monster, or is it a species we have yet to discover? No one really knows.
6,000 miles away, in eastern Turkey, Lake Van is another body of water said to harbor its own mythical creature.
The Loch Ness Monster, Turkish style. A fabled monster from the depths, apparently captured on video.
For decades, there have been whisperings of a beast lurking beneath the surface. And in 1997, an incredible new video, supposedly capturing the monster's silhouette, added fuel to the fire.
When this video came out, people were perplexed. What makes it so interesting is that you can clearly see the head and back of a very elongated creature gliding to the lake on the surface of the lake.
The footage was captured by a local man called Uno Kozak. He had staked out the lake after a number of recent sightings convinced him of the monster's existence.
Just what the monster is isn't clear, although there are plenty of theories. Some say a money-making hoax. Others in the world of research take it more seriously.
Expeditions were launched as intrepid monster hunters raced to search for the creature, but nothing conclusive was ever found. And the debate rages on. On the other side of Europe, Iceland is a country renowned for its natural wonders. With its high density of lakes, shaped by intense volcanic activity, it's perhaps no surprise that this small island nation has its own lake monster. The Lagerflöt worm is said to inhabit the depths of the Lagerflöt Lake in eastern Iceland. The first sighting was made in 1345, and since then, countless reports of a worm-like beast that can stretch up to 90 meters long have come to light. The monster was even documented on a medieval map. In 2012, a video surfaced allegedly showing the Lagerflöt worm moving through the icy waters, reigniting interest and debate about its existence.
It was captured on film, its long, bumpy, snake-like form, moving, avoiding the ice floes as though it had a will of its own. This was actually proof for many cryptozoologists, including myself at the time, that lake monsters were real. Even the naysayers, even the skeptics, find it very hard to disprove that that animal was not, in fact, genuine.
The local authority set up a truth commission to get to the bottom of the mystery once and for all. And after 2 years, the panel concluded that the Lagerflöt worm was indeed real. The Loch Ness Monster may hold the spotlight, but the human fascination with lake monsters is a universal one. All across the globe, the search for answers continues to captivate and intrigue us.
We were in the lay-by just above Temple Pier, outside Drumnadrochit, and we'd been there for a couple of hours, just sat in the car. I just noticed a small, dark shape just out of the corner of my eye, moving along from left to right. I thought possibly it was just, you know, a piece of wood going along, but I mean, it was, or a diver swimming. But then, all of a sudden, whatever it was moving. It did a U-turn in the water, went right sort of back on itself in a sort of horseshoe shape. But then, this huge black hump came sort of rolling out of the water, sort of like this, and it was just huge. I mean, it was like well, people say it's like a boat upside down. It was the size of a yacht hull, except it was just completely symmetrical. It was black, sort of smooth looking. And as it rolled out, there were several feet of it actually rolled through before it actually sort of stabilized and sat there. And it must have been there for, well, I think it must have been there for at least 10 seconds. I hadn't even thought about picking up the camera. I mean, I had an SLR camera with a 400mm lens just that far away from me. If I'd just reached down and got it, knocked the lens cap off, bang, I could have done it. But it's just one of those things, you see something like that and all you want to do is stare at it.
Worldwide, there are stories of mythical beasts yet to be proven or discovered by science. So why is it that the most enduring legend of all comes from this sleepy corner of the Scottish Highlands?
To have monsters, you need some lost worlds. You need inhospitable or inaccessible environments. The Yeti is pretty inaccessible in the snows of the Himalaya. There aren't too many of us that actually go there. Bigfoot in the dark North American woods. Again, it's inaccessible. Walk in there, you get lost in 5 minutes. The depths of the ocean are a lost world. Well, Loch Ness qualifies in a way as a lost world because it's deep and it's dark and it's cold and it's hostile. But it is also accessible geographically. It's only 14 miles south of the Highland capital in Inverness. And so anybody can participate. You can come down the A82, park in a lay-by, look at the loch, eat a sandwich, and you are on the brink of discovery.
Chie Kelly moved to the Highlands 4 years ago and now lives a stone's throw from Loch Ness.
My husband is originally from Inverness, so I know this area quite well. But my husband took me here for the first time just before we got married, and I just fell in love with the place. It's so beautiful.
Chie and her family are frequent visitors to Dawes Beach, a picturesque walking spot on the southern shores of the loch. In August 2018, while out with her husband and daughter, Chie took a set of photos that some consider to be the most compelling evidence of Ness's existence to date.
It was a typical Scottish summer, beautiful, but quite cold and grey. We didn't see any boat, just people walking around, and yes, but it was a summer day, but Scottish summer, you know. I think it was our daughter who spotted first some strange movement on the surface of the water near that white buoy. Some sort of roaring, and it was moving from right to left, and not just in a straight line. It was a bit like zigzag. It went right and then came back, no, left and came back. But we could see the surface sort of humps moving in a screwdriver-like movement.
The unusual humps had appeared around 200 meters from the shore, and the longer they remained in sight, the harder they became to explain.
At the very, very beginning, I thought it was a fish, big fish, a salmon or something. But then usually fish would jump and then go back to water, and you wouldn't probably see it that way. Well, we debated quite a long time about, to just figure out what it was. And we thought, okay, otters, seals, fish. But then, we explored all sorts of possibilities, but we just couldn't, figure out.
Chie took a total of 71 photos in quick succession that, when played back in sequence, form a short video that offers a fascinating insight into what was seen in the water that day. As the video cycles through each image, something clearly breaks the surface, trailed by a large wake or shadow. Two dome-like shapes emerge from the water, then plunge back under a fraction of a second later. One image even appears to resemble the head of the creature, complete with glistening eye. It's truly a unique piece of evidence, but one that Chie was initially reluctant to share with the world.
We didn't want to go public with those photos because most of all, we were worried that we would be ridiculed and we would be target of online trolls.
For 5 years, Chie kept the photos to herself, but everything changed when she met one of the loch's most famous monster hunters.
She said, "Oh, can you just look at these photographs? I want to show you these photographs I've got on the phone." And so, fully expecting them to be ducks or birds or the wind or whatever, I didn't expect to be that impressed. And I looked and just scrolled through the pictures. And I thought, wow, I don't know what this is. I can't explain that. I said, you need to make this public so that investigators around the world can all look at it and we can all figure out what it is. It's not up to me to decide, it's up to all researchers to decide what these things are. And she very much said, well, I've had these pictures in my drawer for 5 years already and I'm not intending to go public because I see the ridicule that this subject attracts and I don't want to be a part of that. And I said, yeah, but you can't just put this back in the drawer. This is too important.
Despite her hesitation, Steve eventually convinced Chie to release her photos. And as soon as she did, theories about what they could be started to emerge.
Yes, they are unusual.
Very, very strange. Very, very strange indeed.
Some were saying, oh, it's a bin bag being blown along by the wind, and but it's patently not.
It might be animated, but it certainly it doesn't look like an animal to me. But it's a very interesting sequence. My best guess is diver's bubbles.
No, I don't go with that. It's very, very odd.
But then we looked at the date, which was I think it was the 13th of August, and that's a Monday. The only divers I've ever seen here in 30 years are on a Sunday, half a dozen times a year. That very much means to me that divers wouldn't have been out here on a Monday.
We didn't see any divers that day. We were here for about an hour or so, so you'd have eventually seen divers going in or coming out. They can't stay underwater forever. Animals, mammals, fish, maybe eels, sea serpent, I don't know, I still don't know.
As Chie's photos went viral, the comments came flooding in from every corner of the internet.
The reactions were very mixed. I think it's typical of this Loch Ness, monster mystery that people can get very, very polarized. So-called believers were very, very enthusiastic. At the same time, lots of people started to call me hoaxer or, fake. And some even celebrities said that this was outrageous fakery. And that was very hurtful. That's the precise reason why we didn't want to go public. And yes, lots of online comments, quite nasty ones.
I know many, many people that have seen something. A lot of people, for gain, fame or fortune, wouldn't want to come before yourselves, dare I say it, for fear of ridicule, because they have reputations, and for people in reasonable positions in business and working life to go around saying that they're seeing monsters in Loch Ness makes their credibility go a little bit out the window,
I'm sure there are lots of people who have seen or who have something interesting, but who are like ourselves don't want to go public because of that.
Almost 1,500 years after the first recorded sighting, the identity of the Loch Ness Monster still divides opinion.
If there was anything, I think it's some sort of prehistoric thing, you know, like the dinosaur era.
It's not too big, dark, with a huge tail.
Or it could just be a giant eel or something like that, or, you know, people could have just been having too much Scottish whiskey and dreaming up stuff.
Loch Ness is a place where science and folklore converge, and value is placed not in the answers we possess, but in the questions that remain.
I think the world cherishes this mystery for the possibilities that it represents. We've mapped all the continents. We've identified most of the big animals that are on the planet. And yet, in spite of our global knowledge, we maybe haven't answered all the questions yet.
But are we any closer to discovering the truth?
Breaking news. Something unexplained has been seen at Loch Ness yesterday.
Iconic photos have been dismissed as hoaxes. But the sightings continue to this day.
To my mind, it's neither myth nor legend. It's fact, it's factual. People are seeing something out there.
Have we really recorded Nessie's voice for the first time?
No one has said with full conviction what the Loch Ness Monster is, so we don't know. Nobody knows.
Or is the famous beast hiding in plain sight?
We're only mere mortals at the end of the day. Who are we to say that they're not seeing anything?
There are those who want the mystery to remain.
I think that they'll catch her one day and they'll pull her to pieces and then everybody will know what she was.
I personally feel like I would rather never know the truth of the Loch Ness Monster. I would rather keep it a mystery and always be wondering.
And those who will always be searching for answers.
They know we're not going to find it. But they know we're not going to stop.
I'm not wasting my time at all. I'm recharging my soul. There is no negative in this whatsoever at all.
I do wonder what I will do when I finally get the piece of evidence that solves this mystery. Sometimes I think I would shout it from the highest heights, here's the evidence for Nessie. Sometimes I think I wouldn't tell anyone. I'd keep it to myself.